Which college quarterback is going to on a Heisman run in 2025? Let's talk all your dynasty options.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts Calvin Timms and Dale Terry, and we're back with another summer scouting, changing up the naming a little bit. Hopefully, gets more people interested in it, but we'll find out. But either way, we're going to be going over the quarterbacks in 2025, and maybe I'm just a contrarian, Dale, because I actually like this quarterback class a decent amount next year. I think there's some sneaky potential there. Now, there's no superstars like a Caleb Williams or a supposedly Trevor Lawrence or one of these type of guys, but I do think that there's a lot of potential and some guys we're going to talk about here today that I think can make a big impact for Dynasty that people are kind of overlooking just a little bit, and they're going to make a little bit of a splash run here in 2025. But before we do that, Dale, how are we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. Yeah, just living the dream on this Wednesday night, man. It's already Wednesday. Like, the week's flowing by. It's already already in the middle of July. Training camps are gonna be starting here soon.
Rookies started this week. There are a few of them out there.
Yes. So we had Caleb Williams sign. I think yesterday or the day before.
Yep, Roma Dunze.
Yeah, things are trending up. I love college football, so I'm getting all ramped up for it. Like with it's called week 0, Calvin. So like, be aware if people start or saying week 0, it's like it's not preseason or anything like that, man. But it's these games that are like out of the country, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That they're playing all everywhere. So, I'm getting excited about that, and excited about some of these quarterbacks that we're going to talk about. Others not as, but
Fair enough. Now, that said, before we get into the video today, if you can, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow that this off season. You can find video content of us on YouTube or Rumble if you are a Rumble user. Not too many of those guys out there, but they do exist. So if you have any comments that are on Rumble, go ahead and hit us up over there. If you're a new viewer, thank you guys for checking out this video. We're going to be putting out all kinds of content, and you're probably thinking about this like, oh, why does this matter for Dynasty or fantasy football? Like, I don't really care about 2025. It matters quite a bit when you're trading your first round pick in 2025. What is that going to be worth? And that's why we're kind of comprehensively going through all the positions and talking about them and giving what we think it is worth right now. And we've gone through the running backs, we've gone through the receivers, and I think so far we have about 5 running backs. It's a very good running back class next year. Maybe 4 or 5 running backs that we have a first round grade on, about 3 to 4 wide receivers that we have a first round grade on. So we'll see today with the quarterbacks who we'd be willing to give a future first for in a year's time, basically, who we think are going to be worth a first round pick, and if we're excited about that or not. So it is very valuable for fantasy football as well. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, that said, thank you guys for checking out the video. We appreciate it. And if you want to follow us over on Twitter, hit me up at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale, or at FF After Dark. If you like that we've been doing more of the live content, let us know. It's completely different. We don't edit the podcast ever for what we put out there. What we record is typically what we get. But when you are live, there is a little bit more pressure that I don't know what it is. It's just a mental thing, but there's that extra little pressure aspect to it. So if you guys like this, hit us up and make sure you guys are commenting in the chat so that we can answer any of your questions live at the end of the podcast. But yeah, it's been a good time, and I like kind of doing this live format a little bit more. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. That said, now let's jump over to the quarterbacks for 2025, and we're going to start again. We've been using NFLDraftBuzz.com, their positional rankings, and just for context, this is not our rankings yet. We have not done I don't know enough about these guys as a holistic class to give a fair ranking for these guys. So we're just using their rankings to kind of.
And it's
go ahead.
And with that too, I don't think it's fair right now. I mean, we can say how we feel about these guys preseason, but really, in the college football season, there's a lot of ebbs and flows,
Yep.
like the NFL, obviously, but it's the players and teams that we think are going to do well, in September, October, don't do as well in November, and some of these guys fall off,
Yeah.
well, like for instance, like the Drake, well, like in my opinion, like the Drake Mays of the world, how people feel about him,
I don't know. It's hard for me to say that he
with
fell
their
off when he was
season,
still a top three pick.
it's I don't disagree with that, but I think a lot of people had him as, had him pegged as the number 2 guy. It's for
Sure.
sure. Obviously third overall pick. So I think a lot of people had. I feel more people had him and Caleb Williams kind of pseudo tied in
Hmm.
some aspects. And
Yeah.
and for Caleb Williams, like he kind of came back to earth a little. So, I think it's important to at least be aware of some of these guys that we're going to talk about, but don't really take a lot of these rankings seriously quite yet until we get to December.
Yeah, definitely. And you can definitely see the guys that go on the miracle Heisman runs, right? Joe Burrow was left for dead essentially until he went down to LSU and was able to put together one of the best college football seasons of all time, right? And ended up going number 1 overall as the clear favorite to go number 1. So, you have the surprise out of nowheres. You also have the long-term guys and the guys that can also disappoint potentially, like Drake May. So we're going to talk about these guys and we're going to have a good time here today. Let's start with NFL Draft Buzz's number 1 quarterback, and that's going to be Quinn Ewers. Now, Quinn Ewers, it's hard to say how to value Quinn Ewers right now. He's 195 pounds, so he is very small for a quarterback. 6'2". He has a little bit of a rushing profile too. I think he's a little bit more mobile for a college guy. Now, Quinn Ewers is someone that I've actually been interested in for a while, so I've been paying attention to him. I am not the college guy. If you watch this every single week, Dale's more of the college guy. I'm more the NFL guy, but there are names obviously that I do know. And last year, Quinn Ewers only had 59 rushing attempts, so wasn't super mobile, but I do think that is part of his game, and I want to see if he can tap into that a little bit more in 2024. But weird transition to the NFL, or to the college starter scene for Quinn Ewers. Was the number 1 prospect back in, I think, 2020, 2021, that time frame. He leaves high school a year early, so he left as a junior in high school to go to college, goes to Ohio State, doesn't do anything that year. His freshman, air quote, freshman year, senior year, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
That's because he was behind, likes of Justin Fields,
Yep.
CJ Stroud was there. So like it was a very crowded room at Ohio State, which I was a little surprised that he went there to begin with.
Sure.
I always felt it was just a money grab.
Yeah, they paid him. That was NIL just started.
And I honestly feel it was probably best interest to kind of, with what Ryan Day has done, there's a lot of things that you can say negatively, but I will say one thing that I feel he does pretty well is develop a college.
Ryan Day. Yeah, he does.
So,
he makes it easy for him.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we never got to see that from Quinn Ewers, because after that first freshman, senior year, whatever you want to call it, he transfers to Texas, starts as a freshman at Texas, 10 games played. Mediocre season, to say the least. He got banged up in that season as well, and that's kind of been a recurring theme with Quinn Ewers so far, is because of his slight frame, he takes a little bit more of a beating, and it's not been the best for him in terms of his production. But 2022, mediocre season, 190 or 172 completions for 2,100 yards. Pretty bad. He had 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Last year, 2023, big step up in terms of all of his passing stats. 100 more completions, 272 completions last year. He had a 69% completion percentage, which was pretty nice. 3,500 yards and 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So much better year 2023. Decides to ultimately go back to Texas for this final year, his junior season. He was draft eligible because of him leaving high school early and everything like that, regardless of the non-Ohio State season. But he goes back to Texas, which was an interesting decision because Arch Manning is there as well, and everybody wants to see Arch Manning play. Now he has to wait another year, and if Quinn Ewers gets injured or, struggles at all, he's going to get benched. So it's potentially a career-threatening move as much as a career-defining move. It is super risky, but it can pay off extremely well for Quinn Ewers. I still like the talent of him. I still see it all. He has some of the best arm angles in this class. Like, he is a very good thrower of the ball, but that durability, man, is terrifying. And sometimes his decision-making is a little bit questionable as well. So as a college guy, what do you see more of in Quinn Ewers?
Well, I like Quinn Ewers. I mean, obviously, I watched a lot of Big Ten and Ohio State. I didn't really he was barely on the field. I've been watching some Texas stuff. He can be very Mahomesian.
Yep.
Like college Patrick Mahomes. You think college Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah.
Under the radar, gunslinger mentality, stuff like that. I think where Ewers falls a little short is some of the nuances, some of the footwork, a little bit like that. Which he's able to learn, but I don't think I think he's so talented where he hasn't had to do a lot of that stuff,
Right.
in my opinion, and that can get a little tricky. I think it was in his best interest to not come into this draft, this last draft with Caleb Williams, Daniels, and Drake May, because I kind of view him as, I like him more than Daniels, as a quarterback wise. Fantasy is a whole different thing, but
right.
He would be my 3 or 4, coming out, where in this instance, pre any of the pre season, I guess you could say, he's my number one guy. Like, he's the guy that I really want.
Sure.
Of these guys. So
yeah, he's definitely up there for me. I love him. Like you said, I think the talent is definitely there. We just need to see a full season from him. If he can build off of what he did last year, I think it's entirely in his realm of possibilities. And he's
sorry, yeah, and I think it's gonna be good to see him against. I'm not saying that the Big 12 was the worst competition he could have played, but he's going to play some legit defenses. He's going to play, like Georgia, Alabama.
Oh, right, because Texas is USC or SEC, right?
Is an SEC,
yeah,
baby.
Okay.
And speaking of that, if you guys are college fans, they are not going to penalize the horns down. I'm not going to do that because, we may have some Texas fans here, but yeah. So, and also, Texas is going to play Michigan this year, which that's going to be a test, for Ewers as well. So I think we're going to get a lot of information this year, a lot more information on Ewers, and this Texas team that's supposed to be legit. So I'm really excited to see what he does, and again, like preseason, he's my top quarterback right now. I think he has all of the skills to be a high end quarterback.
Sure.
Let's just see if he's able to put it all out there this year. Because if he does, he's going to be the number one quarterback off the board.
Yeah, I agree. He's definitely up there for me as well. All right, number 2 here on their list is another guy that I like quite a bit. I might be higher than most on him. I don't know, but Carson Beck, 220 pounds, 6'4", more of the traditional kind of size of the quarterback, plays for Georgia. Didn't do much. He's a little bit older because of Stetson Bennett. That was the starter for multiple seasons there in Georgia. Finally goes to the NFL in 2022. They had the dominant defense, the NFL or the college championship roster essentially for a couple seasons there. So they weren't going to turn the entire offense and everything over to Carson Beck at the time, with Stetson Bennett basically doing everything that they wanted him to do with this offense. But I do think that Carson Beck is being overlooked a little bit based on what he did last year. And it was really under the radar, in my opinion, because you hear all the noise about all these other guys. And last year for Georgia, Georgia's not seen as an offensive powerhouse, and this is also with Brock Bowers being banged up quite a bit last year as well. So keep this in mind. Was missing his probably number one receiving option. And again, it's not a star-studded grouping of receivers here, but 302 completions last year with a 72% completion percentage, which is nuts, for almost 4,000 yards in college, which is just amazing. 24 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So you really didn't hear about that much in maybe it's just me, but Carson Beck was dominant last year for Georgia. If he can build off that this year, man, he is going to potentially make himself a lot of money as the number one quarterback off the board. So am I crazy in loving Carson Beck as much as I potentially do here?
Yes.
Okay.
I will say that Georgia is a superior team, superior offensive line, running backs, superior tight end last year,
Sure.
even though Bowers was hurt. He's a good quarterback. Not saying that. It's when he needs to be there, he's there. The only thing, he is not an improviser at all. He's not very good on the deep ball. If there's anything where he has to scramble out, he's not as accurate. That's just not his game. His game is more timing. In the mid-range, short-range passes, that kind of stuff, and that could be good, but he has to have an offense tailored for that, and really, he's a system quarterback. I'm just gonna say it. He's a system quarterback to me.
Hey, so was Tom Brady, for a while.
Well, this guy's not Tom Brady, so I'll be very honest. So, I think he's a good player. I think we need to see a little bit more out of him. I think, I know he did really good. It's the passing percentages there, yardage is there, all this and that's there. But I feel, I'll probably get a lot of heat for this. I'll take it. There's only, in these elite conferences in college, there's only a handful of elites. So, for instance, like the Big Ten, you got Ohio State, that team up north, you got, sometimes Penn State, sometimes, and there's gonna be others coming this year with Oregon, blah, blah.
Sure.
And for the SEC, you have Georgia, Alabama, LSU, but other than that, all the other teams are dog water, man. So, I'm not excited to watch, Ole Miss, Arkansas, personally,
What a hater.
Yeah, or like Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and that stuff. Like, they're not playing these world beater defenses that a lot lot of perceive the SEC to have.
Sure.
So, I feel I'm more interested to see, now that some of this NFL talent's gone from the roster the past couple years, I know they're still turning these guys out, in a turnstile. But
right.
I'm interested to see what he does, with this NFL draft buzz. Like, they have him projected as, a top 10 pick.
I think he will be, for sure.
Yikes. And his number one player comparison is good old Zach Wilson. Yikes.
Zach Wilson was good, man. In college. He's good.
Calvin, okay.
The Jets ruined Zach Wilson. The Jets ruined him.
Zach Wilson was garbage. Whoever saw his tape at BYU, he played against horrible defenses.
Yeah,
he played hero ball. He was doing a lot of Johnny Manziel stuff.
That's fair. And, that is fair.
He did a lot of Johnny Manziel. Carson Beck, whoever we're talking about, Carson Beck. He is not Johnny Manziel. Like, he's very surgical. I feel he has that. Has those traits. He has the size. I think he's just missing some of the improvised and on the it's the bootleg stuff that in this modern NFL you have to have it to be successful. That's my worry.
Yeah, that's fair. So the biggest thing for me, and again, one of the reasons that one of the things I think a lot of people overlook with quarterbacks is the surrounding talent, right? Justin Herbert. People did not like Justin Herbert, right? But when he was coming out, now everyone loves Justin Herbert, and he's a really good quarterback, right? But when he was coming out, you say, man, who else on his team is being drafted in the first 3 rounds? Like nobody, right? From an offensive standpoint, right? Now, obviously, Brock Bowers gets drafted top 11. He was number 11 overall. But other than that, I don't really see too many amazing receivers on this roster. There might be a couple second or third rounders here in the next couple of years, but there's no first round talent there. Same with Drake May. His best receiver was Josh Downs, who was a second round pick by the Colts. Like I do think that if you're able to create a little bit more with lower valued talent when they come out to the NFL, I do think it says a little bit more about what these players are able to do. So, you get these guys.
I will combat that with that. I don't feel it necessarily matters.
Who knows? There's no way to quantify. Right?
I don't necessarily feel that them because first round talent's rare. That's
there's only 32 here, right? But
yes,
no, I get it.
Literally, there's only 32.
I know, I know, but you got guys like Justin Fields, right, who has Ohio State, right, and they pump out multiple first round receivers every single year, and you can say, well, Justin Fields was a really good passer in college because of the weapons, made him look a little bit better. He goes to the NFL and he struggles a little bit. Justin Herbert was a really good passer with no weapons, goes to the NFL and it still translates. That's the only thing I'm saying.
But I also feel that having a solid offensive line, having a good scheme, and having a good coach, having good coaches there, is
I agree. We'll see what he can do. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on Carson Beck, but we'll see what he can do here in 2024. If he can repeat on it, I do think he's going to make himself a lot of money. That's kind of the moral of the story.
I think he will too, and I think he's going to bust like we've seen some of.
We'll see. We will see. Now, I like him. Dale hates him. So you can let us know in the comments whether you like Carson Beck for this upcoming season. Another guy that I know Dale's not going to like a lot is going to be number 3 here on their list, Shedeur Sanders from Colorado.
Colorado, my God.
215 pounds, 6'2". Obviously, Deion Sanders' son. Deion thinks he's going to end up being the number 1 overall pick. I am hesitant to put him there.
I will say this guy's fun.
He is fun to watch.
He's fun. He is fun to watch, but boy, oh boy.
I do think that he's a decent. I think he's a little underrated as a quarterback. I think he's a little bit better than people give him credit for, but at the same time, he gets way too much praise for playing in the Pac-12. Essentially, you know what I mean? He plays nobody.
Well, and for playing and for being a 4-8 team.
Yeah, that's also a good point.
They're getting hyped. Now I feel he is a very talented guy, like he was at Jackson State with his dad, primetime Deion Sanders, and then he went to Colorado for the past couple years. So, I think the biggest thing I have for Sanders is he does not have internal block. He's playing. If we're talking Manziel ball here, if we're talking Manziel ball. This guy plays it, which it can be. He does. I feel he does because I feel that his offensive line is full of a bunch of like high school freshmen. It feels like they don't know what they're doing.
Yep.
I mean,
very rough.
It's really rough. He was sacked last year.
Yeah.
Like
part of that is on him. He, like you said, he has no internal timer. He's kind of like Will Levis, just in the Pac-12. You know what I mean? Like
zero internal clock. And which in the NFL, that's going to make you turnover prone. That's going to make you get hurt. So
now I think really quickly. So the benefit and the reason why he's interesting, right? You go back to last year. First year in a big conference where they track the stats and all that stuff, you can find his Jackson State stats, but I'm not going. If it's not compiled here, I'm not going to find it. Let's just put it that way. 298 completions last year in the Pac-12, not bad, especially given the talent. Obviously they have Hunter, Travis Hunter. playing both ways there, and he missed a couple of games as well, but 3,200 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. So very conservative on that end of the ball, which is why I think he's a little bit better of a passer than people are giving him credit for. You know, you think about Shedeur Sanders, right or wrong, I'm not putting a judgment on it, whatever, but you look at him and you kind of say, oh, he's more of a Lamar Jackson type, right? He's more of a mobile threat. And he's not. He does like to play Mahomesian or Mazzellian, right?
And that's one of his strengths,
yes,
is that he's a really good improviser. He's always looking downfield,
yep,
which is really, really good, you know, and, you know, but also that can lead to, but he just needs to fix his own training.
right.
He fixes that. If he fixes that, I think he could be really good. He has really good arm talent.
Yep.
You know, he has fantastic arm talent. I know he has good football IQ because of his dad.
Yeah, and he's going to have a great promoter because of his dad. So he's going to be a high pick.
Yes, he will.
As long as he does well, right? So let's say he's top 10. Now, so let's go back really quickly. So Quinn Ewers, let's say he gets top 10 draft capital next year. Would you be willing to spend a first round pick in 2025 on him?
A first on Ewers, yes.
In a super flex league, obviously we're talking purely super flex here for quarterbacks. I would be willing to on both Ewers and Beck, given top 10 draft capital.
I think Beck, I would be.
If he gets top 10, would you?
A later first.
Okay.
A later first.
Yep.
Like a mid to late. I would rather have Sanders than Carson.
That's fair. From a fantasy perspective, I can see that. We'll see where the landing spot kind of goes. I would also be willing
agreed.
to send a first on Shedeur, given a good landing spot. You know, if he goes to,
I agree.
You know, let's say he goes to, I don't know, the Giants, for example.
Tennessee, man.
I think the Giants would be fun.
Oh God, him in New York with Dion.
That'd be a nightmare from a management standpoint, but he would love it. Dion would love it from a promotional standpoint. They would love it. So, by the way, I did want to just point out really quickly how stupid I talk about this every time, but it's so dumb to me how college rushing for quarterbacks is tracked. He had 111 rushing attempts last year for negative 77 yards because of all the sacks. Like, can we please take sacks out of rushing yards? It's the dumbest thing ever. Like, I don't know.
Calvin, college football is the only pure thing I have left in my life.
So dumb, dude. It's so stupid.
Come on, man.
Oh my God. It's so stupid. Like, negative 77 yards, ran backwards 111 times.
Calvin, to me, that makes more sense than taking out of your passing yards because you're not passing for it. You're rushing the ball.
It shouldn't count for either one. That's sack yards should be their own thing. Just make them their own category.
Well, fair.
But, all right, let's keep moving here. We're gonna go with number 4 here. I know you do not like this guy at all. Jalen Milroe with Alabama, 6'2", 220 pounds. Now, he is definitely more of a Lamar Jackson rushing type, Anthony Richardson type, I guess. Very much looks
Malik
to
Willis,
run first. What was that?
I said Malik Willis.
Malik Willis. There was a name, and I was trying to find it. That is the name. That is exactly right.
It's Malik Willis.
Yeah, I do not like Jalen Milroe that much either, based on everything that we've seen. But I'll let you kind of break him down here. Why you hate him so much? Other than just Alabama.
Hey, he's a very good athlete. I'll start there.
Sure.
He's a very good athlete. I feel he's a very good leader. You know, I have been for the demise of Nick Saban since he left for Miami. It's Miami Dolphins back in 2006 or something like that. So I am here for anything bad to happen to Nick Saban led team. But I will say Milroe has all the skills to be a really good quarterback. He has that athleticism. He has a huge arm.
Does he have? Is he a good passer? Though? That's the question.
I don't know. I don't know if the nuances, the football IQ is all there.
Right.
So you know, it's with his decision making. stuff like that.
That's where I think
He's
he
more
struggles a
leadership.
little bit is the decision making. But, you look at his stats. Now, let's just take last year because that's where he actually played the most at quarterback. 13 games started, 187 completions for about 2,800 yards. Not terrible there. 23 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Decent stats on paper. Not amazing, not terrible from the quarterback side. But again, how stupid rushing stats are scored. 161 rushing attempts last year for 531 yards. He actually had positive yardage so far, which is good for him. But, you actually take out his sacks and everything like that. That's probably closer about 700, 800 yards, which is very good for a college quarterback. So I like him for fantasy. Would you? I don't know what to think about him.
He's like Malik Willis. He's a talented athlete.
Yep.
Talented athlete. I know he can do the things that you need him to do while at Alabama. I don't feel that translates to the NFL because he just doesn't have the nuances to be an NFL quarterback. A good rushing style college quarterback, yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
That's all. I mean, I'm not. I maybe a end second for him. Third, I'm out on Jalen. I've seen enough people I've seen enough players like this, like him. I would say, to know that I think he's, again, good athlete. I'm sure he's a great kid. All this and that. I don't like bashing people. But he has a lot to work on to be a lot, and it's not going to take 1 year. It's going to take many, many.
All right, fair enough. We'll see where he ultimately goes, but a name to keep in mind for next year. It's going to be very interesting to see because Nick Saban is no longer with Alabama, so it's a whole new regime there. How is the transition going to go? And if he can prove it with a new system and everything, then maybe he can kind of prove that to the NFL as well. But Alabama for a long time there was just a pipeline to the NFL, so we'll see where that ultimately leads for Jalen Milroe, but he could be fun for fantasy. He definitely could, because of his rushing upside. Jalen Milroe, if he goes highly to a decent team, man, the fantasy production for the rushing side is going to be something to keep in mind. So, all right, number 5 here, Drew Allar from Penn State, 6'5", 243 pounds, big boy. I don't really like him that much personally. I think he's a little bit overrated on this list, and this is where maybe the drop off. There's a couple of names. We're not going to go purely 1 through 7, 8 here in terms of the quarterbacks here. There's a couple guys that I want to talk about that are a little bit further down here, but we're talking through the top 5 here, at least giving it respect in that way. But Drew Allar is somebody that I'm not impressed with on paper, watching highlights, anything like that. It's just he's like a Kenny Pickett type of player to me, and I'm not thrilled with it. 233 completions last year with a 60% completion rate. Not amazing there in terms of that. 2,600 yards, 25-2, very good with the ball security there. A little bit of rushing, 74 for 206. Again, what is that actual number? Maybe fairly good from he's a good all-around athlete, but is there anything that I'm missing? You watch him more than I do, probably.
I'll start off with this. When he played Ohio State last year, so have you seen the meme of the Oklahoma State quarterback, his hand shaking pre-snap?
Yes, I actually have seen that.
I'm sure you have. That was Drew Allar versus Ohio State and Michigan.
Terrified.
He was horrible. I mean, he was horrible. I'm not saying I could have done any better because I know I could not have, but he was pretty bad in all the big games. He did not play very well. Penn State as a whole offensively played horrid.
Yep.
Horrid. It was almost Iowa level of ineptness on the offensive. So he does have a big arm. I didn't get to see it at all against when he played Ohio State because his offensive line couldn't do anything. He had trouble escaping the pocket. I don't feel I feel he's more of a I'm not saying he makes a lot of bad decisions necessarily throwing the ball. I think he tucks the ball a lot more than what he should.
Hmm.
And I think he's scared to make a bad decision. He's scared to make a bad choice. He's scared to throw the ball in where he thinks he needs to.
Risk averse,
And that's
basically.
yes,
Yep.
which isn't a bad it's not a bad thing, but he's not making not he's not a playmaker.
Sure.
Not. Not.
Yeah, he
So,
seems like
you
a
know,
game manager, and it's just I'm not that
he's
interested.
he, he- he's very timid,
Yep.
when it comes to that, which I get. He wants that ball security, but like if you're getting blown out anyways, like you might as well chuck it deep. You
Yep.
know, you
All
might
right.
as well try. So, I just he's not consistent. He's not. I don't know.
I could see him falling out of the
He
top five. I don't think he's somebody in a year's time
I
that we're
think
going to be talking about that much.
I think for him, he needs to go back to college. And
It's always risky, but yeah, potentially. That is definitely a potential for him. So we'll see what happens with Drew Lard. Just a name to keep in mind. Again, he's top 5 on this ranking. I don't think he'll be there in a year's time. I don't think he's going to be there for the draft. So a couple of names. We're going to talk 3 more players here, and they're guys that are a little bit further down the list. So we're skipping down a little bit here to number 7. Connor Weigman from Texas A&M. This guy is extremely interesting in my mind. Has dealt with a lot of injuries so far through the last couple of years. Through 2022 was a freshman, played 5 games, 73 completions for 55% completion rate. Not amazing there. 900 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. Last year, 4 games played, 82 completions for 69% completion percentage and 1,000 yards. 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like when you watch this guy, he looks really good on tape. Like even just watching highlights of this guy, you're like, man, this guy looks like a really good quarterback. Cannot stay healthy though. And that's going to be the biggest thing. If he can stay healthy this year, put together a whole season and a good season with what he's been able to do so far just on the field when he's healthy, dude, this guy is a sleeper dark horse candidate for top 10 NFL draft pick. Like this guy could be really good in my mind. And I think he's rightfully down the list a little bit further just because of the injury piece. But this guy has all the tools that you could possibly want for a starting NFL quarterback.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. But like he was the coveted piece of Jimbo Fisher's, fantastic. I think it was the #1 recruiting class back in 2012 where he signed like a bunch of 5-star athletes. And then they crapped the bed pretty. It's the past couple years. So that's why offensive line is extremely important. So
Right.
that's another. But yes, no, I agree. Like he needs to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, like like he has the arm talent.
Yes.
He has NFL IQ.
He makes good
He has
decisions
the high.
too. Like that's the
Yes,
biggest thing.
he has the high end trait. So
Yes.
I think his biggest thing is just getting on the field, getting those reps. Just getting a feel for everything, and then those small things like the footwork. Some of that will get there, but it just needs to get down, like just be on the field and not just be throwing in practice.
Right. And the injuries, the one that ended it last year was the foot injury. So not really. Maybe it's something that if they can fix that, he can come back and not have a recurring injury there. It always does scare me, foot injuries, because they can linger for a very, very long time. But just something to keep in mind. Another name to watch. Again, this guy, I just don't want you guys to be surprised if he makes a miracle run and it's all of a sudden being talked about as a top 10 pick. He has every trait, like Dale said, all the high-end stuff that you could possibly want in a quarterback. So Connor Weigman with Texas A&M. Next guy we're going to talk about really quickly is going to be Cam Ward from Washington State. He transferred this year, did he not?
He's at the U now.
Oh, right. Miami? Yep. Okay, so he went from Washington State to Miami. It's going to be interesting to see how that does. But, man, this guy has a lot of fun stats. He is a senior. I don't know where. He played in a small school in 2021.
It was it was at the Incarnate Word.
Yes, that's
It was
right.
a FBS school. So
Yep.
yeah, he went there. He went to Washington State afterwards,
Yep.
where he kind of shined. Well,
Oh man.
he did shine.
He had,
He was
so
great.
through 2 years at Washington State, 643 completions for 7,000 passing yards. Now we've been talking about like Drew Alar, right? Who is a top 5 guy. He had about 250 completions for 2,800 yards. Not exciting whatsoever. And this guy is almost 2.5 times, right? So I like Cam Ward quite a bit. 48 touchdowns in those 2 years with 16 interceptions. He's a little bit more of a risk taker in terms of where he decides to throw the ball. But, man, this guy is fun. And I was hoping he would come out last year. I thought he was a kind of a dark horse candidate last year, but ultimately decides to go back, get one more year of good tape on him going into the NFL. And, again, this guy, he's rated number 9 on NFL Draft Buzz, but dude, he is someone that I could see as a top 3 guy. Like, if you told me he's top 3, I would not be shocked.
I feel he's a poor man Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's a poor man's Michael Penix.
A poor man's who? Sorry,
Michael Penix.
Hey, it's because he's a lefty. Probably why.
Exactly.
But I do feel this guy is a good decision maker. He's got a strong arm. It's gonna be interesting how he transitions from, I feel more pass friendly Washington State to probably a more run heavy Miami at the ACC level. I don't really think the talent he's gonna face is necessarily any different than a Pac-12.
Sure.
So I think my big thing, he has some of the intangibles. He doesn't have great arm strength. He does not possess a super good internal clock, which could lead to a lot of sacks that he doesn't need to take. So
sure.
And he does some of the Mahomesian, or not Mahomes, the Manzielian things where he's
making that a term.
He's not all. Yes, I'm gonna make it a term now. I guess.
Sure.
Like I need to talk to Webster's dictionary. But he can be good on the run, but sometimes those lead to turnover. So I think kind of buyer beware on it a little bit.
Sure.
I get what you're saying. He's agile, elusive. He has these traits, but he's also let's see, how old is he? He'll be 23 by the time around the draft next. So
yeah, I'm not too worried about that again. But
I know, and I'm not super worried about that either. But he's jumping around to a lot of different schools. Like he didn't come out last year, but also last year was a pretty strong high end quarterback class. So
he definitely has a chance to cement himself as a top 5 quarterback in this class for sure.
I don't disagree because this class is
on paper it's weak, right?
Yeah, it's weaker. Yeah, pretty mid.
I like these guys. I think that they could be fun for the NFL. Now, obviously,
I like Ewers. I like Ewers and Sanders. That's about it.
Okay,
I'm not big on any of these.
Dude,
other
I
guys.
like these guys a lot more. I think that they have potential, but I'm a sicko, so it is what it is. But all right, let's talk about the last guy here, and we're going to talk about Jackson Dart with he's with Ole Miss, right?
Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Ole Miss.
So 6'2", 220 pounds, traditional size there. He's a little bit older. He's going to be a senior this year. He played at USC for 1 year. Decent, I guess, not terrible stats for 6 games played. 117 completions for 62% completion percentage for 1,300 yards, 9-5. The one problem with him, now he goes to Ole Miss, 459 completions over those last 2 years. He has 6,300 yards. Again, I like to see at least 3,000 passing yards a year from my quarterbacks for me to be excited for them going to the NFL. 43-16 at Ole Miss, which is very good. Not great at USC, those 6 games, 9-5 interception or touchdown interception ratio. He's mobile, he gets out there and runs quite a bit. He has quite a few rushing attempts of the last couple of years. So you like to see that. Last year he did also have 8 rushing touchdowns, so he was not afraid to run it in. I think that there's some potential there personally, but What are your thoughts on Jackson Dart and what he can do at Ole Miss?
He's fun. I like Jackson Dart.
Sure.
I think he kind of reminds me a little bit of like I love Ohio State quarterbacks. Like he reminds me of kind of GT Barrett. Like I feel he's a good leader. He can, he likes to run the ball.
Okay.
He's a very talented runner. A sneaky good thrower of the ball. I don't think he does anything like that's like great and like world shattering by any means, but like he does have a good decent arm strength. It's decent arm strength.
Yep.
I feel with him in Judkins the past year or so that with that like being really good to play off of that, play action, stuff like that. I think he needs to get better about reading defenses and reading his reads a little bit better. More of that. Like he needs to be a more balanced quarterback.
Okay.
Said that a lot,
Okay.
and I kind of feel a lot of these guys that we've talked about kind of lack some of those skills. Like it's the footwork a lot of the time. It's being able to read. Well, it's not necessarily read the defense, but like when you're going through you're going through your progression, stuff
Right.
like that. So, I think my worry for the NFL is that he's going to be a more active runner than a thrower,
Yeah,
which
kind of a run first type of guy, which
yes,
you got
yes,
to tame those
which
feet.
isn't
No happy feet here.
yes, 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 which isn't a bad thing. So, but I feel that when he does throw the ball, it's pretty sound, like he does have those things. He just needs to get a little bit better at it. I still think he's going to be. He's probably, I mean, projected as a third round draft pick. I think he's going to be lucky to be a day 2 pick.
All right, fair enough.
Because of his skill set. I feel it can fit well, but I don't think he has the high end talent of Ewers and Sanders, and I know you're in love with Carson Beck.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't feel he has those. Like he's good, but I don't think he's like elite.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. That is definitely fair. So those are the names that I wanted to kind of bring up here. There's others, obviously, and not all these guys are going to end up going to the NFL. Some of them are going to go back. Like I would not be shocked if Shedeur Sanders doesn't go back for one more year in college with Dion.
I would be shocked if he. I would be shocked if he.
Really? We'll see. I mean, I don't know 2026 well enough, I guess.
Part of me feel a part of the sicko NFL mind that my mind goes to is that like Sanders is going to dip, like he's going to dip from Colorado, and then he's going to go to the franchise that drafts Sanders because they're going to fire their coach.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's just my like
your
big brain,
galaxy brain.
big brain theory that has no standing or anything like that. But
Conspiracy theory here. All right. Conspiracy time. Conspiracy time. No, so other than fantasy wise, future first, what's it worth, right? Shedeur Sanders, Quinn Ewers, you said Carson Beck, depending on landing spot, obviously, and
Yep.
if he can continue on what he did last year, you'd be willing to spend a first on those three. Is that it? Okay.
yeah,
Jalen
that's about
Milroe
it.
is a wild card. Connor
Yeah.
Weigman, Cam Ward, these guys are wild cards in my book. Those three, I like those guys. I think that there's high end traits with all three of those that, from a fantasy perspective, that they could be very interesting. So those are probably your second rounders right now. But with 3 first round quarterbacks in a super flex, we now have 5 running backs, 3 receivers, 3 to 4 receivers, and 2 to 3, I guess, quarterbacks. So it's a little bit of a weaker class, especially for the later first next year. So if you wanted to move that for a more known player in 2024, I don't blame you, but I do think that you have to look through what you need, right? Obviously, if you're someone who needs a running back and you're trading a future first for, I don't know, Travis Etienne or a Kenneth Walker or somebody like that, a Kyron Williams, all these guys that have a little bit more of a question on them. You know, there's those question marks. What's their value going to be in a year's time? What's their value going to be this year, right? Like, we have no idea what Kenneth Walker is going to do. I like the player, but is Zach Charbonnet with the new coaching staff, is he going to ultimately take over here and it's going to be more of a 50-50 split? Like, we have no idea. Is Kenneth Walker going to stay the alpha there in that backfield? So why give a future first for one of those guys when you can just get somebody that we like a lot more in 2024? Now, conversely, if you really need a tight end, then you can get, you know, who's I don't know, Dalton Kincaid or one of these other guys, TJ Hawkinson or Mark Andrews for a first. It's not a great tight end class next year. You obviously have to wait typically for tight ends anyway. Same with quarterback. It's not an amazing quarterback class. So if you can go and get like, how many of these guys would you take over JJ McCarthy, for example?
That's a fun experience. Let's see. I would take Quinn Sanders.
And this is assuming they get top 10 draft capital, like just like JJ.
I would be edging maybe Carson back, but I kind of view JJ McCarthy and Carson Beck.
I'd rather have Beck personally, but I think Beck's a better quarterback.
I would say all those three than everyone else.
Okay, so
I would probably rather have.
So basically, you know, and I like Bo Nix quite a bit more than everybody else. Michael Penix, I like him a lot. You just got to wait on him, right? So those three quarterbacks, they're roughly worth a, you know, mid first round pick right now. So if you can get JJ, like if it's close between them, right, and you can send that future first, that could be Quinn Ewers for JJ McCarthy, you're not really losing out there. So think through your roster and what you need on your team. You need a receiver, go and grab like a Jackson Smith and Jigba and hope that works out over just waiting for next year's rookie class. So yeah, I do think that it all depends on what you need and how high the pick is, really. If it's a top 5 pick, I think it's pretty good. You're getting quite a few good players up there, especially at the running back position. There's those superstars there. And obviously these quarterbacks are going to be interesting as well. So I like it. I actually don't think that next year's class is too bad. It's a little thin in my opinion. Like I think the second round's going to hurt a little bit, but you feel the same way?
I'm not in love with this quarterback class right yet. I know we get enamored by quarterbacks every year.
Sure.
And personally, I find it, there's only so many starting quarterback positions in the NFL, and not all these guys are going to fill those roles. And
right.
I think, you know, at most 3 guys are going to fill that role this coming year, you know, and being a starting quarterback. So, I'm not in at that. I don't think it's going to be super good. So, you know, I'm not super in love with this class. You know, I like Ewers. I do like Sanders a little bit. I mean, he's kind of a tier below Ewers. So, but I'm not super enamored with these
rookies. Yeah, all the rookies. So, all right. Well, there's our future first. We didn't really touch on tight ends, but the reason being is there's really not any that are interesting. There's only one that's even projected to be a first round pick, and it's the Michigan tight end. What's his name? Yeah, Colston Loveland. I don't really want to talk about it. We'll talk about tight ends next year and when it gets to the rookie time. So when we're prepping for the draft, we'll talk about these guys a little bit more.
Love to hear that. I mean, if anyone cares, there's an Iowa tight end.
Oh baby, there's always an Iowa tight end.
There is.
It's tight end dude.
Leachy. Yeah, it is Luke Leachy. So just have that name.
Yep, he's going to be a first round pick next year. Just be ready.
I'm guessing like a second or third, and then he's just gonna like.
No, I meant fantasy pick. He's just gonna work his way up there.
Fantasy. Oh yes.
Late
Agreed.
first.
Agreed.
Yep. So.
Agreed.
All right. Well, let us know your guys' thoughts on this quarterback class. Is there anybody that we're missing that you're excited about? Comment down below. Obviously, if you're watching this live, thank you guys so much. We got quite a few viewers, but nobody really commented. So if you guys are watching this live, make sure you guys are commenting with questions. Just helps us out. We want to hear from you guys. So that said, if you're watching the replay, hit us up in the comments down below, and we appreciate you guys. So that said, thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, we'll be back Friday at the same time, around 9:30 on Friday, going live. I'm gonna have no kids on Friday; they're having a sleepover, so we'll be back with a fantasy recap on Friday, and it's gonna be a good time. We're gonna be getting into a lot of the training camp rumors, I think, from all these rookies. First one, Xavier Worthy's struggling. Go figure. But we're gonna get into all that.
And he's having hammy trouble.
That's yeah, poor guy. All right, we're gonna get into that on Friday. Until next time, thank you guys so much for joining us, and have a great night.
And we all got dreams, we all want things, but what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?